So, they can just finish up with the next. Thank you so much. And then they'll be happy to start again at 12. Well, they can also, but that's also fine. But so I thought there'll be a sort of a short handover from the one speaker to the other around 12. But if 2 is what was arranged, that's also fine.
Because they could teach they come back at 2.
That's fine. That's okay. I'm just quickly going to thank you. I should have done this before I do that.
If you need a gap, I will speak of the cover, but in my mind, if you need somebody, but preferably not.
I'm going to rap poetry.
Like freestyle. No, joking.
But that's okay. Then we'll just keep Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Initially, the idea was that there will just be free flow from music directly to poetry. So I'm sorry for intervening, but I thought it might make sense just for me to say good morning and welcome, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to use this opportunity then also to say thank you to everyone involved, and then I don't have to say anything again until the seminar later that I'll chair. So let me just start by thanking the musicians. Thank you so much for opening this few hours in such an appropriate manner, and Henriette for bringing them. We really appreciate it, and we'll hear you again around 2. So thank you so much. Then Diane Ferus. When Karen and I spoke, and I said, what about Diane Ferus? I couldn't imagine that we'll get you here. So thank you so much. This is so absolutely special. Thank you so much. Then Vivienne, Professor Lawack, same here. I thought your schedule probably not allow, and she immediately said yes. So thank you, and you really dressed for the party, coming with poetry, we hope. So thank you so much. So then also my friend and colleague of many years, Professor Wessel, when he started, I mentioned the event and the possibility of having something and the early cases, and he initially, he immediately started scratching, and he's going to say a few words about those early cases and trying to make sense why initially women were not allowed to enter the legal profession. So we'll listen to him. Then also our other speakers between 11 and 12, Cameron from the Gender and Law class, and all her mates being here to support her. Welcome and thank you. Then also Noshipi, another student that Carl secured. I think she's around the corner. Thank you so much. And then a colleague, Shara, she's not here yet, but the 3 of them will also reflect on their experiences as women in the profession or in the law school. Then of course, Justice Sachs. Olvi, thank you so much. You've been a friend of this faculty, but also of me of many years. I will thank you again and formally welcome you. I'm sure they can hear me, but during the seminar at 1. But really lovely that you're here already to join in. And maybe just Karen in absence. Because of load shedding, the artworks can't run yet, but 12 o'clock we'll switch over. Karen is the person who curated the collection of Justice Sachs, so we'll have a look at that. Then my colleague Karen, I'm new here, so really wonderful just to have someone who jumped in and supported me, and hopefully this is the one of many events to come. And then just to the students again, your work, your assignments will also be on the screens from 12. And thank you, I know you were all a bit unsure about this new teacher giving you a kind of assignment that you're not used to, but you submitted really wonderful creative things, and you'll see it on the screens after 12. Then I must, and not one of them are here at the moment, but Adelaide, there's Adelaide East and Shanshla. our marketing officer. Are you there, Ms. Shansha? Yes. Thank you so much. This event would not have been possible without the two of you. You were here last night until night. And there will also be 2 or 3 more events after today. So I can't say enough thank you to the 2 of you. I hope I haven't left out anyone. Of course, just our dean for his silent support in the back. We noticed that, Jacques, and thanks for that. So I'm immediately going to hand over to Diane Ferus for a poetry reading. As I understand, there's a new poem also for today, so that's really, really special. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Professor Lawack, Dean of the Faculty, the Prof with a nice orange socks, just as Albie Sachs, Karen, Chinny and Kester, and students and all that's present here. Thank you for the opportunity. It is wonderful to do something for the faculty that is known for its excellence. I have 2 poems I'm going to read. One I've written especially for this occasion. I hope you're going to like it. The first one I'm going to read is My Mother Was a Storm. My mother was a storm, a sky filled with dark clouds. She could threaten or just burst open. She gave warnings before she lashed, her thundering tongue uprooting old dead trees, theories. My mother cleaned with an iron duster. She swept away all dirt and falsehoods. My mother risked having her name tarnished, but could not be tamed. I did not want her to rain down so fiercely. She had to stop before it became too wet. I feared the drowning. I feared those floods that had me gasp for air. I thought my mother was too intense a winter. Knew that she carried a summer, but one in which flash floods hid. Oh, but how I long for that storm now, a fierce and all-encompassing one. These days in which hard rocks bash, tear at skin and soul, I wish my mother could enter the sky and with an angry wind gather the clouds, rain down hard and dissolve those rocks still so intact, so smug. Today, I need my mother. The one I wrote for this faculty celebration, 1923 to 2023. As if she stood by idly, waved a kiss and said, I will wait for you. No! While men were bombing, blasting away the world, women prepared a future by patching up the present. They knew that men would stop their games and return hungry, heavy, and angry. World War I brought men to their knees. It were the women who pulled them up. Yet, in spite of that, it was only after 5 long years that men let go of their fears, reluctantly allowed women to practice law, never admitting that they were in awe, that they could not point out one flaw. What they saw was a passion, a commitment to uphold life, doing balancing acts on a very sharp knife. It's in the shadows hanging over World War I that the idea of women in law will always die. Today we think back and decry, fist pointed to the sky. This is an accusation, not a celebration. Thank you.
Load shedding changes everything. Because I actually have my stand. I wanted to say thank you very much to the two colleagues, Professor Karen Mother and Dr. Karen Clinton-Pfister, for inviting me to be part of this. This is my home faculty. And I know sometimes, oftentimes when I say this is my own faculties and other faculties are slightly jealous that they have the DVC academic in this faculty. And I'm very proud to be part of the faculty as well in my other capacity. So when I got the email from Karen explaining what you want to do, I just want to have one disclaimer. Nobody can go after Diane Ferus and do a poll. I'm not doing a poll. It will pale in insignificance. With a theme of 100 years of women in law, and when you ended your poem and you said that this is not a celebration but an accusation, it really speaks to what I was thinking about. What were those women like? I'm a storyteller. And I'm interested in the stories of those women that were part of the firsts for us in South Africa. 100 years of women in law. And probably because the judiciary has been very prominent on television and media, etc., there's been a lot of, also with the recent with Deputy Chief Justice, now Deputy Chief Justice Meyer's interview with the JSC, I was so taken aback by that interview, and in fact the whole process, but that is a story for another day. But one of the things that we know, because we are looking to the bench to lead this, and that comes from our constitution, that we really would like to start to have both racial and gender transformation, and that it at least reflects the composition of our society. And much as, and this is where I'm linking with you, much as we've made progress, however you define progress, I'm looking at the women here today and I'm wondering why are there not more men here? There's still a lot of work to be done. From my perspective, as a former Dean of Law, I've seen it, and I've seen it here, 8 years at UWC. When we're going into graduation now, and when we have graduation, what do you see? More than 60% of law students? Women. What are top law students, by the way? Women. Always women. I'm very happy sometimes when I see one of our male counterparts getting that first prize. The hard work is there. But what we've also seen in the profession of work with various parts of the organized profession, but what we've seen is that whilst we have all these women studying law, doing so well, they enter different parts of our organized legal profession or in other areas, but specifically I'm talking now about the attorneys and at the bar. That number of the 60% drops dramatically, even if they go through their candidate attorneyship or whether they do the bar exam. And so it makes me think, what were those women the firsts? What were they thinking about? What were the kind of challenges? I know that Bessel will be speaking about this, and I just want to mention a few that we've forgotten. Right at the outset of our democratic dispensation, and it's lovely to have Justice Sachs here, on that first, I hope I'm correct, but on that first bench of the Constitutional Court, we only had two. And that is Justice Yvonne Cornell and Cato Regan. And interestingly, and I want to challenge our students here, it's probably one of the last set of justices that came through that were true academics that went into, and much, or rather not as many academics actually become justices or become judges in the High Court. So I just want to think of a few. Here within the Western Cape, we've forgotten about the fact that Jeanette Traverso is our Deputy Judge President of the High Court here. And she's, I think if my research is correct, she's probably been the longest serving woman Deputy Judge President. I only know of one Judge President, now that the former President of the SCA is now our Deputy Chief Justice, Mandisa Meyer. I only know of Monica Leo, JP. I think she's in the Northern Cape. And there was a certain stage where, reflecting on, as a woman that has come through law, and actually law is such an exciting field that you can use law as the base to do all sorts of other things. Because it's the kind of training that you go through that gives you the critical thinking. It's a different way of looking at the world. Now I'm wondering, what did Janet Traverso go through when she became that Deputy Judge President? Currently, I think it's one of our own, Judge Goliath is the acting Judge President here. I'm also thinking of, recently I'm on the South African Judicial Education Institute Council, and especially when all the interviews were happening and we were all watching and we were all going and gasping, if there's a question, so how would you should the fact that you're a woman, should that play any role in whatever role, especially with Justice Meyer's interview. And it's not unique to the judiciary. When there's a study that was done, and I think the Law Society of South Africa collaborated with that UK study, where they found that even though we have a lot of the entrants, as I said, very few women in law actually end up in leadership positions. So this journey of 100 years is still too short in a sense. I'm thinking of Kathleen Glepo. I don't know if some of you know Kathleen. Kathleen, she's been very involved with the Black Lawyers Association, and she's currently with the not so new, the Legal Practice Council. She's at the helm of the Legal Practice Council. But that's not what stands out for me. What stands out for me about Kathleen, she was very involved with the passing of the legal sector code, practice code, etc. But she started her firm of attorneys, and I'm going to speak to the women here today. Being the founding manager and managing director of Lega Incorporated, and what she does, she employs a staff complement of 70% female. And under her tutelage, she's got a mentorship program, and under her tutelage, she has produced 20 female attorneys. And currently, she's got about 6 female candidate attorneys that works under her tutelage. So she does not take the position of being a principal as just something that she does, but has incorporated the whole mentorship program around making sure that this is a firm made up of women. So the picture I wanted to talk about that unfortunately I can't show is in my office, and I've brought this with me from PE, which is now Lega, we call it GQ, and it says women in law. They actually had, interestingly enough, 1906 to 2006. So somebody got their years wrong, because I think you are correct, it's actually 1923. But then when I looked at that picture, some of the names just jumped out at me, or rather the pictures of them. Navi Pillay. One of us, I need to take my phone so I can share some of our own, the ones that come. I just want to have a look at the picture and tell you, why do I have this picture in my office? And why was it so important for me that I wanted to show you the picture today? We have there the early days, Fatima Mia. Let's not forget our first speaker of the democratic government under Madiba's government, Premi Junwala. I have Navi Pillay, I have here Justice Mutoro. Do you remember, everybody remembers Griffiths, but do you remember Victoria Mkenge? And even in the pictures, she's sometimes less featured than her husband. That's why we had a memorial lecture at LMU, Griffiths and Victoria Mkenge Memorial Lecture. Do you remember his first? And then from us, she used to work in the Community Law Center, now Dala Oma Institute, Bridget Mabandya. And when I look at this picture, it doesn't matter what work, it's actually quite a nice picture. What work I do, I draw inspiration from these women, because I always feel if I look to my back, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. And you will have your own giants in your life. And so our message to the young scholars and our students that you are thinking of a wonderful career in law, and in other parts where you can use law as your base degree that will enable you to do all sorts of things in life. If you're a woman, remember we're standing on those shoulders of those giants. Become a giant so others can stand on your shoulders in years to come. I always speak about sometimes one of the things that hold us as women back, and it will be the same whether you're in law or in any other profession, I've witnessed over years, is that we have what I sometimes call the PhD syndrome. It's got nothing to do with us and PhDs. It means two things. Sometimes, if the woman is there, we pull her down. That's PhD. Sometimes, not all of us. If a woman is here, we push her down. So it's a responsibility that we have. Wherever you find yourself, that you don't make yourself guilty as a woman of a PhD syndrome. So, latching on to you, let's hope that we can have quite a few giants here that will be the people where other giants can stand on. And so we grow. And hopefully we won't be around for the next 100 years celebration, but we will remember today. In closing, it is very strange that you were thinking about, and it coincides with the project that we're doing. That's why we have cameras here today. We are wanting to showcase the stories of some of the women in this 100 years. 10 women representing 10 years, every 10 years of the 100 years. And so we might come to some of you and interview you for a short documentary film that we are producing on 100 years of war. Congratulations to the two of you and all those that have been involved, and also to the Dean of Law and the colleagues for allowing the space for us to be celebrating or commiserating.
No, it's for the, we're feeding it also live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Ollie, good afternoon. Hello. Thank you for your lovely poem. And reporting that this is not a celebration but an accusation. As a man, I'm stepping forward to perhaps share a few thoughts about the first women that challenged the exclusion from legal practice. So, of course, we're here because on the 10th of April 1923, the all-male parliament adopted a law which enabled women to enter legal practice. It's a strange law as statutes go. The first part of the law says that women should be able or are now able to be admitted as practicing attorneys, advocates, conveyancers, and so forth. But it's the second half of the law that's intriguing. It says that all existing laws should be interpreted accordingly. In other words, the change is brought about by Parliament enacting an interpretive mandate, instructing the courts to reinterpret the laws in a specific way. That made me think that it might have been possible to interpret the laws in this way even before this law was enacted. And indeed, if you go back into the history then, you find that 10 years or so before the law was passed, women challenged the exclusion from their ability to practice in the High Court in the Transvaal and in the Cape Colony as it was at that stage. So I think we should move away from the legislative moment that we're celebrating to the case law for two reasons. First of all, it places the women in the center of our story, so we can start talking about these litigants that approach the courts, and it also places the court and the male judges in the limelight, and the legal culture that existed at that time, and that might, I think we could ask or suggest, still persists to today. So the legislation, in a certain sense, made the court orders against the admission of these women obsolete. But in a certain sense, the legal culture remains and has survived. So that's where we're going. These women approached the court as a site of political struggle, as a site of transformation, and the courts disowned that space. We'll get to the reasoning of the courts. My question is whether the courts today have changed or are still seen as not a site for political transformation and struggle as it perhaps could be. So going back to the women then, the first one is Sonia Schlesing. She arrived in South Africa from Russia. She was born in Moscow in the early 1890s. And when Mahatma Gandhi opened his law practice in Johannesburg in 1903, he was looking for a personal assistant, and she joined the firm. She played a very prominent role during the next 10 years in that firm. It was a time when Gandhi developed the strategy of passive resistance and spent a lot of time in and out of prison fighting the registration laws at the time. And by all accounts, while he was in jail, she took care of the practice and ran the campaign in a certain sense. She visited people in jail, she managed the finances, she wrote public speeches very significantly in 1908. She drafted a speech that she wanted to read to a congregation of Indian women and men. Gandhi wouldn't allow it, and he read the speech on her behalf. But in the speech, she says, she refers to the suffragette movement in England and how women there are fighting the system, and urged the people locally to take courage from what the women are achieving in England, that the local men here should emulate in a certain sense. So a year after this, she became indentured as a clerk in Gandhi's firm. We signed the contract, and the other men working in the firm, but the Incorporated Law Society wouldn't accept the articles of clerkship. In those days, you had to do clerkship for 3 years and then you could be admitted. So no legal studies at the law faculty as today. So Sonia Schlesing then approached the High Court to order the Incorporated Law Society to register articles of clerkship. A single judge, Judge Bristow, sat and declined the order. The law was a recent law. It was a law just after the South African War in 1902, so it was a British proclamation to re-establish a legal system in the war-torn colony, and basically said the High Court can admit as an attorney any person, provided that he served the articles of clerkship. But of course there was an interpretation act that said he means she, and the argument was that this is a new law, it's a fast industrializing era, it's post-war, things are changing, and that Sonia Schlesing qualifies obviously under the letter of the law, being a person to be admitted as attorney. The court declined that in a very circular manner by saying the Act says every attorney can be admitted, or any person can be admitted as an attorney, and the term attorney has a very established meaning, and that's only open to men. So interpreting the word person in light of attorney, which is male only. But it's a separation of powers issue that it boils down to in the end. The judge is sitting here on my own as a single judge. I'm not going to bring about this substantive legal transformation. The correct route is for Sonia Schlesing to approach Parliament and to fight a political campaign. Of course, the fact that she already referenced the suffragette movement highlighted the absurdity of this suggestion in a certain sense. It was an all-male parliament. Women did not have the right to vote at that time. They only acquired that in 1930 in South Africa, as you might know. So for the male judge to refer a minority group at that stage to Parliament, another male-dominated forum, seemed to have been a dead end. So after the dismissal of her claim, Sonia Schlesing kept on working in Gandhi's law firm until he eventually left the country in 1914. They remained in correspondence and contact, and she wrote to him that women can now be admitted. But she had gone on to study a BA at Wits University and became a teacher at King's High School, where she taught Latin. So there's this connection, I think, with a love of law and things law. So she taught Latin, and eventually, in 1955, when she was 65 years old, she enrolled for an LLB at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She was ill at that stage, so she dropped out the next year and she died the year after that. So her dream of practicing as a lawyer remained unfulfilled. The second character is Madeleine Hoekie, which brings us down to Freiburg and to the Cape. This is perhaps the more well-known case. So Madeleine registered also articles of clerkship in 1912, 3 years after Sonja Schlesing tried to do so. Again, the same story, the Incorporated Law Society wouldn't register. She approached the Cape High Court, and here the Judge President Marsdorf said yes, she can be admitted to practice law. So in her case, the argument was slightly more tricky because the law that regulated the admission to the profession dated back to 1834, so much longer than the one in the Transvaal. I think it's more difficult to deal with such a law in a certain sense, but Judge Marsdorf said this law, the prima facie meaning of the broad language, again, it speaks about any person can be admitted, would allow it to be admitted, unless there's a more specific law, dating back to wherever, that, creates an exception. So any person except, there's a specific law excluding women. And he went through the common law and he couldn't find such a specific law excluding women. There's an interesting part in the judgment where they take us back to Roman times and another woman that tried to enter the legal profession, Carfania as her name. And in the digest there's reference to the reason why women can't practice law is because of the behavior of this woman, Carfania. She annoyed the powers to be, and they, as a result, banned women from practicing law. So that's the solid sand upon which the corporation is built, and the whole thing remained in place. So the Incorporated Law Societies obviously appealed to the then appellate division, and in the appellate division the court overturned the judgment to say women cannot practice law. So Innes, the acting Chief Justice, did so by invoking this doctrine that the meaning of a statutory provision is fixed at the date that it is enacted. So in 1912, when you interpret the statute, you have to give it the meaning that it had in 1834. The original intention of the drafters or the original meaning of the words in 1834. And going back on that presumption, on that assumption, he found that in 1834 the word term person did not include a female person, so on that basis, in 1912, Madeleine Hoekie could not enter the legal profession. Again, the meaning of the law is fixed, and if the law must be changed, it's not for the court to do so, it is for Parliament to do so. So separation of powers argument at the bottom of this as well. And also all three of the judges urging Madeleine Hoekie to approach Parliament to bring about legal reform. Innes says in so many words the result is harsh, and it's a hard outcome, but in so many words he said the court can't help at all. The court can't be of any assistance. So I don't know what happened to Madeleine Hoekie after that. I couldn't find information. Perhaps if you're interested in this for a research paper or something, you can take out the project. But I don't know what happened to her in any case. She ever practiced law, but of course 11 years later Parliament did enact this law, and here we are now celebrating that event. As I said, that event formally overtook the court orders because the courts, women can now be allowed. But that idea that the courts could have interpreted the provision person in a transformative way, the courts could have served as a site of struggle and change, remains for us to ask whether 100 years later that dominant culture that the court has owned that has been effectively disrupted by the presence of women, the change of the constitution and so forth. I think people would say it's an open-ended question, how we judge the judges going back. Because today you still hear courts say it's a separation of powers issue, legal transformation should be driven by the Parliament, should take the lead, and the court has a very limited role to play in this context. So it's not so clear-cut that this interpretive approach or argument would not hold water today. And I say this because Justice Sachs wrote a judgment Luckily it's on the right side of history. In Daniels versus Campbell, it's a Constitutional Court judgment in 2004, where the question was whether the term spouse in certain legislation includes only people married under the Marriage Act of 1961 officially, or whether it also includes people in monogamous Muslim marriages, so contracted in terms of Muslim rights but not registered under the Marriage Act. And Justice Sachs said, well, it's not interpretive gymnastics that's required of us here. All we need to do is to give the word spouse its ordinary meaning. And then the Muslim spouse, or, would be recognized. And he refers in the footnote to exactly these cases, the Rookie case and the Schleswig cases, and say this is similar to those cases, but of course it's not, because what Justice Sachs did is exactly the opposite to what the courts did in those earlier cases. He is taking the lead, using the court as a transformative space to bring about legal transformation. But the story is not so simple, because there's a very strong minority judgment written by Deputy Chief Justice then, I think, or he was not yet, Moseneki, in which Justice Moseneki said we cannot reinterpret this term in the way Justice Alvin Sachs is trying to do so. That goes against all the principles of statutory interpretation. It means that words are too broadly and too open-ended, and so from an interpretive perspective, there's nothing we can do there. We can't help the Muslim women before the court. But of course, times have changed, and so the court does have this battle power now to declare legislation unconstitutional. And that's what he suggested. The law must be declared unconstitutional, and the court could remedy the effect by reading words into the statute. But that's not an interpretive remedy. So just as a matter of interpretive culture, the interpretive culture that Justice Moseneki put in place is very similar to the interpretive culture that the justices followed in the original Schleswig and Rookie cases. Which leaves one to ponder the question again. How do we judge those judges from those days? Perhaps we should ask, in light of your poem, how do we judge the judges sitting on the bench today? Thank you.
I want to hand over to our other speakers, but maybe let me just say, I'm so happy that the sort of my instinctive response that I didn't really articulate to any of the speakers, that everyone picked up on this. When the dean wrote to me saying what they call man from here, and every time I use that word, I say you should change this acronym. The management committee of this faculty is called MANFOM, and it really bothers me. But anyway, when they approached me saying, well, Garland and I do something to join the broad celebration. So maybe just to mention this, there's a national campaign, and Michelle Leroux, well-known advocate, is sort of at the forefront of, and they kicked off already on the 10th of April. And today, in the next few events, in the next 2 weeks, our April events, this is really the faculty's contribution. But I immediately said, this can't just be a celebration. We need to take this time to ask at least 2 questions. The one is the extent to which women have been included fully, and will they ever be? So absolutely, thank you for saying this is not a celebration. But then secondly, to ask the more difficult question about women's contribution and the extent to which women have really changed the legal culture. Often we are co-opted willfully, but maybe sometimes also without recognizing that we are being co-opted. So that's really also the idea behind today. Maybe also we mentioned, we named this event Legacies of Dignity, because we're also honoring a colleague of ours, who sadly passed in December, and the 1 o'clock seminar, Justice Sachs will specifically honor Drucilla, but one of her books is called Between Generations of Women, Legacies of Dignity. And I really think of Drucilla, she loved stories and poems and myths and music and fables, and this event really also for me is sort of respecting her legacy and how she did law. At the previous institution where I work, we always say people quite often when we do poetry or music say this is not law. And we always say, no, this is law. We do law, but we do law differently. So I think also an invitation to all of us to do law differently. But on this note, I would like to bring in the student speakers, and maybe firstly, Nashipi, please come and share your stories, and then Cameron come directly after, and Sheila, I see you've entered, so then we'll hand over to you guys.
And there's light.
But it won't take long.
Good day, everyone. As a way introduction, my name is Nasimi. A student currently doing my career here at the University of Western Cape in the faculty. Okay, I was invited to come and share my experience in studying, particularly the disadvantages, the struggles that women face when being a student, not just a law student, but as a student as well. As a way of greeting, I would like to greet everyone that is here. And this is such an honor for me. To me, it is an honor because this is what I've seen in my dreams and what that I could actually come through. Right. So considering where I come from, where I grew up from, because I grew up where people like me were never regarded as you can never make it to university. No one really cares whether you go or not. And being a child and growing up and having these dreams and thinking that you want to be there, because I've seen myself, this is where I belong, this is where I will be one day. And in a society where literally no one cares, whether you go or whether you're not going. And whether you are, when you are going and showing them that you can, they discourage you and pull you back. Just as a way of background, I grew up in Guguletu, in a place called Nearest. It was first an informal settlement, now like an RDP location. Lived in a family, huge family. When I say RDP, you can imagine it's like 2-bedroom, and we were like 16 in the house. So you can imagine having to study law in such an environment and the challenges that you face. It was first a struggle for me to finish high school with everything that is going on, the violence, the substance abuse, the teenage pregnancy, and I became the victim of all those things. And despite everything that I was a victim of, I never stopped believing in myself that I will make it one day. As a result, hence, I was able to take myself out of that situation, like those situations, and be able to know what I want. Remember the 6-year-old me who knew and wished of what I wanted, and which was becoming a lawyer. Obviously, it was just, what do you want to be in class? I want to be a lawyer. You don't know what a lawyer is. But as I grew up, I understood and I knew what it is and what is meant to be alone, because you're the voice of the voiceless. So, growing up in such a family, no one has faith in you, and having to be in high school and all that, I had to fight. I dropped out 3 consecutive years. Not because I was failing anything, it was the struggles that were in my surroundings. But eventually I always remembered that I will finish my grade 12. I was bullied at school and all that, and it's a whole bunch of stuff for another day. But I always knew that I will pass my grade 12 and I will become a lawyer. And I don't care when I become a lawyer. I don't care if it's the last day of my life, but I will. And in 2018, I passed my grade 12. I was 21. You can imagine being 21 years in school uniform. And I should be finishing my degree by then. But for me, I put blinkers and didn't want to listen to what the society says about me, because I know what Nasipi wanted. I know what I wanted. I decided to avoid everything and just go there and fight for what I wanted. And that was to become a law student and become a lawyer. And so when I came to the University of the Western Cape, which was my first choice of university. I had no other choice. I didn't have any other intentions of going anywhere else. And I had no other choices of other courses. I just knew, lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be the boss. And so when I came to the university, gosh, the struggles. I came, no one from the family, no one has been to university, no one was going to help me, no one is there to help me. I'm doing all this by myself. Sometimes there's no transport fare, sometimes I sit down. I passed my matric with 4 distinctions, and I was not admitted in this university, and God knows for what reason. I was coming to this place every single day. Sometimes I would not come because I don't have money, trying to get admitted, begging for education in this faculty. But, you know, God made it happen. I was admitted, it was already March. Imagine the time I've missed. But you know what, the determined girl who knew what she always wanted was like, you know what, Miss, you can do it. You're a star, you know, focus. And I managed to pass my first year. And when I passed my first year, obviously, I was now fit and, you know, we're going to do this, girl, we're going to do this. And the society was not quiet during this process, during this period. There are some personal things that I'm facing. The society is discouraging me, it's pulling me down. It's like, who do you think you are? You'll never make it. You know, and even the family, they don't really understand what I'm doing. Because I was a victim of too much pregnancy, I have 2 kids already, and sometimes you have to go to work. What are you going to feed your kids? Is it the books? You come back home, take your kids. I can't even do my preparations for my lectures. Sometimes I can't submit my assignments. You know, all those kind of things, and those are the things that I faced each and every single day. But even though I lost hope sometimes, but I like, go, you can do it. It's going to be okay. And imagine coming home, tomorrow you don't know what you're going to use to transport yourself to school. You have lectures, you have kids making noise all around the house. It's not just my kids, 8 bunch of other kids. You understand? So it was struggles, and you don't know anyone. You can't stay in the library until it's late. There's not going to be transport for you to travel home. And those were the challenges that I faced. And no one is going to understand because nothing is written all over me and what I'm going through. And having to also go, this is what I'm going through. It's also, they don't want to be a burden to people's lives. People have their own problems, you know. So I faced that, and it was difficult, but I still pulled in from it. So there we go. Second year, Now, we fighting though. And then family dramas, like I said, having no one to look after my kids. Now I can't go to school. Took my kids to a home. It was devastating for me. Staying with friends so that I can be able to come to campus, because I know this is the only road for me to take myself and my family out of the situation. And sometimes I don't blame them, because maybe they're also being ignorant, and sometimes it's the situation that they're doing these things to me. You know. I was admitted in hospital several times. Came back, it was COVID, can't catch up online. No data, no laptop, nothing. And you know, it's just like one thing after the other, one thing after the other, and you're like, whoa, when is this going to end? Like, it's like a curtain, like asking, why me? Why? But then I was taught from a young age that don't ask for that, because God will never burden you with something that you can't handle, right? So you can imagine now things are like that. And sometimes coming to university, you know, you meet different types of people, students, backgrounds, being undermined. Sometimes I feel like I don't even fit. Maybe even my vocabulary doesn't match. You know, I don't understand these legal terms. You know, sometimes I feel like maybe my English, let me just rather keep quiet. You know, and that was discouraging me. And little by little, I was getting under depression. And because of everything that was happening, they ended up being homeless because of the situations at home. You know, the constant fights and everything. Having to just leave that, rather be on the streets. I was on the streets while in university. So, it for me at that time, you can imagine, but I prayed and told God that, you know what, I'm not going to leave this thing. Whoever said I'm going to leave this thing is a liar. They are lying about me. And I had to drop out my second year. It was already second semester, September, close to examination, after I tried so much, you know, and when I thought that, no, this is not too much, because it's either the education or I die. The stress was a lot. It was too much. I have kids, and there's a lot that is going on. I was a victim of domestic violence. I was abused. This was just a lot happening that, you know what, it's okay, let's call it a night, we'll come back. And then I came back, as usual. Came back, put on a ring suit, let's go girl. And that was now 2021. And I started my second year, passed with distinction. Like I pulled and pulled, like, you know what, we're not gonna let this happen to you again. And then, you know, the society, the devil, my friends behind me, like, who the hell do you think you are? You're not going to make it. And I lost my mom. And the family drama started all over, and I got depression, I was diagnosed with depression. There was just a lot. Finding out I'm pregnant, having a place to stay, forced to be with a new partner, because we ran away from the domestic violence, thank God. I survived. And the new situations, partner has kids, having kids, now 4 kids. Look at the kids, they follow me, you know, and having to now raise other people. And it's difficult. So, I'm now a student, and I'm raising 4 kids as my own. And I try by all means to wake up every day, come to school, and act like a normal student with no problems. Then I have to get out of this main gate and take off the cap of student and put on the cap of, now back to reality, your mother. And then I go home, and then I have cooking, I have cleaning, I have bathing the kids, I have to wake up 5 a.m. I'm pregnant, but that is not limiting me from forgetting who I really want to be. And sometimes, I don't want to lie, it's not all glory, as I said, it's difficult. I struggle, I freak out, I break down. Sometimes, like, is this even worth it? Is this even worth it? Are you worthy of losing your life over this law? Law is a tough course on its own. It just desires you. It's like, just have a relationship with it. Don't have anything else involved. But I've been through more than involved things. Like, I've been involved in much more things that I think, like, I don't want to undermine and say another human being can handle the world, because some people have been through this. And so, now here I am. But there were also advantages in studying law. The advantages I've heard in studying law were meeting the great lecturers. Meeting the great lecturers like Dr. Chinen. I met Dr. Chinen in 2020, before lockdown. And she has been the rock behind me, the giant Mem was talking about. The Masipi, you can do this. I will cry, will talk for hours. This is happening to me. Masipi, you can do this. Remember, and I wouldn't be here if it were not for it. I wouldn't, because when you have a bed and it's falling, so you put a stone and then the other leg falls and then you come and put a stone. She was that in my life, and I want to thank you for that teaching. And so the other lecturers as well that were willing to listen. Sometimes students, it's not always we're making excuses. It's not always about the excuses we make. Sometimes it's real. And when we're not heard that I couldn't submit on time, it's like, I couldn't write my test. Like, you missed the test, so what? You missed it. You catch up another one, and I just want the lecturers today to know that some students, they really go through difficult matters. It's not mere just excuses. I'll get a doctor's note. I didn't write. It's a real hard life out there. And sometimes you won't know because you never experienced it. And it's no crime for that. That's what made law to be an interesting course for me, and also loving the law, loving the studies. Sometimes you feel like the content is not making sense. Like you're the Latin, hey. But I knew at the back of my mind that, Nasipi, you are great. You know this. And sometimes I've heard you go and say, God, can't you just pause? Can you just pause my problems for a little bit? Just give this 2 years and you'll finish my degree. You will see. I'll be a genius. You will see, you know me. I'll be the dentist, but it's sometimes I just got to accept. Maybe some things they better. Sometimes God makes you shine, and then he wants you to be average for some reason. Because I couldn't, and sometimes I felt like I was stupid, maybe really innocent. Maybe they are right. You can't be here. You can't do it. And I feel like I'm glad that I never listened to those voices. I feel like I'm glad that I never took everything that everyone else said, even the family that didn't believe in me, and believed in myself, and always remembered that, you know what, you're going to be there, you're going to go there. Because now I am here, and I never had ever imagined that I could stand in a place like this one day and talk about my story. But I'm glad that I have, and it gives me hope, and it almost lightens up my journey that you're still going far, or remember where you come from. See, have you ever thought you'd be here today? And I just want to say, in conclusion, that I am really grateful and to be here. I'm honored. Hopefully that this is not my last going onward, and hopefully that this degree will be over by next year.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here. My name is Cameron Mayer. I'm in my final year in the LLB 5-year program here at UWC, so 5th year. I never really knew what I wanted to do when I was younger, but I knew that I wanted to be someone who bettered the lives of others. It wasn't until later in my high school career when I became aware of the injustices that plague our societies and the discrimination that people face every day. In my matric year, I made the choice to study law because I wanted to be a representative for those who felt that they did not have a voice. So when I started my studies here in 2019, I had big dreams of one day working at a big law firm and later on maybe making partner, having my name on the door. And later on that year I found out that those dreams would be a lot harder to achieve, not because of my performance or my merit, but because I am a woman. It is no secret that women face more obstacles than the average man in their careers, like working in unfriendly environments that are dominated by men, sexual harassment, the challenge of balancing work life and family obligations, working harder just to prove our worth, unequal pay, and the list goes on. But hearing these things, we can often feel discouraged, and we ask ourselves questions like, why should we even try if this is the way things are? Or, I am just one woman, I can't change anything. But I don't feel discouraged, nor do I think any woman, here or not here, should either, because in order to ensure that these unequal obstacles are appropriately addressed, representation of women is crucial. We cannot end the discrimination against women without women. In South Africa, women make up the majority of the population, and that is why it is so important that our voices are heard in political and legal decision making. In order to stop discrimination against women and girls and achieve gender equality, it is essential to have a strong legal framework in place. Priority should be given to enforcing these laws and assessing their effects. While there have been strides, both in the public and private sector, with the representation of women in the legal profession increasing in the recent years, and the fact that there have been a lot more talk to reduce gender-based violence and discrimination against women, it is not enough. More effective action is required in addressing this problem, and it is time for proactive policy writing to compel beneficial, significant reforms for our judicial system going forward. We also cannot ignore the importance of male influence in the agenda of inclusivity. Men must influence other men to change their attitudes and to respect women. Men and women have an equal and significant role to play in the transformation of gender relations in the society. No society can truly be emancipated until its women and men are free and equal, and to this end, men and women bear a shared responsibility. So as I approach the end of my studies, my dreams have changed and perhaps even become bigger. I hope to pursue a master's degree in law and maybe sometime very far in the future, a PhD. I have dreams of working internationally with hopes of making a change globally. While I don't know what the future holds, I will continue to work toward a world free of discrimination against women. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Drucilla. I'm not an LLB student anymore. It's a bit long ago because I see I'm in the group of LLB students. That's 20 odd years ago. But I am a lecturer here and I'm a PhD student. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here and be part of this very important event. I'm thrilled that the law faculty is doing something like this. I haven't prepared anything formal. I thought I'd be sitting in a bit of a circle just talking to people, having a general conversation. But that's fine. There are some important things I'd like to share, so thank you for allowing me to do that. It's 2023 and we're still talking about women in the law. And I think we're going to be talking about women in the law for a very long time. So most of what I want to chat about today or share is a little bit about my journey as an academic now, which is quite new for me, that new anymore, but since 2018. But before I started working here, most of my career was spent in the NGO sector doing gender work in organizations like the Women's Legal Center, Sonke Gender Justice, Sex Workers Education, Advocacy Task Force, etc. So that's my main area of work actually still, and luckily here at UWC I've been able to continue teaching in that area and participating in different sorts of kind of activities relating to gender and the law. So that's also been really good for me. So a few years ago, and actually Prof. Lawack was a keynote speaker at one of these events, so she knows a lot about this project. It was a project about gender transformation in the judiciary, and she was the dean at UPE at the time and did the keynote address. And I was part of a group of people who were engaging in this. We had this project about gender transformation in the judiciary. I was at Sonke Gender Justice at the time and worked with TGRU. So we went around having these legal sector meetings in the different provinces. And part of this was about trying to understand, why gender transformation in the judiciary was actually a problem. Why there was such low representation of women in the judiciary, as well as in the legal profession, the advocate's profession and the attorney's profession. And now we call them legal practitioners, all of us, but there's still a bit of a distinction in the Act for certain purposes. But the point is, it was actually a really important project. I don't think enough has been done with that. Because the findings were incredible, and we ended up lodging a complaint with the Commission for Gender Equality. We were saying, we want you to investigate as a Chapter 9 institution why women are underrepresented. But you know what? There were lots of things that I learned from that, and it's actually not just about the numbers. So presently, we have the highest percentage on the bench that we've ever had. In the magistracy as well, it's improved. And it's about between 30–40%, I'd imagine right now. During COVID, they never released all of the stats as they did prior to that. But the point is, it's far from equitable representation, if we call it that. But what I learned from that was important, like I said a few seconds ago, was that it's not just about the numbers. We cannot also just make an assumption that putting women on the bench and in higher positions in the profession is going to, that is representative of a major shift in terms of advancing equality for women, because it is not. Not all women are feminists, not all feminists agree on gender issues or on what equality is. We've seen it recently with the sex work bill to decriminalize sex work, more radical approaches to feminism are saying, no, we don't want sex work decriminalized. Liberal feminists are saying we do. And that's just one example I'm making around the law, for example. It doesn't mean that we all share the same ideas. We have different experiences which are often linked to our backgrounds in terms of race, our socioeconomic conditions, etc. And we can carry on in all these intersecting issues or grounds of or oppression and vulnerability that makes us think differently about things. So it doesn't necessarily mean when we have more women in the bench or women in leadership in the profession that women's rights are going to be advanced or we're going to attain equality at a more rapid pace. You know? Unfortunately, it would be nice if it was just about representation, but it is not. But this doesn't mean that we don't need more women in the profession and that we don't need more women on the bench. We do, because I think it can contribute to greater objectivity being used on the bench when decisions are made. So it is important, but it's not just about the women in the numbers. We've seen this. So, because certainly, and I mean this is also something for me on my personal journey as a feminist, in learning as I get older around my approach to what role men play, and I'm just speaking of what you spoke about earlier so beautifully, by the way. And that journey has taken me to very different ideas of what feminism is and men's role. Having a boy child has changed how I think about things. And I had feminist friends who said, you're contributing to the patriarchy having a boy child. How dare you choose to right? So I'm just giving you some example. My introduction to feminism was through the 1 in 9 campaign around the Jacob Zuma rape trial, Kwezi. And I was trained like a soldier by radical feminists, and I will not mention names, who were quite disappointed in my choice to have a child later on. But my point is that was my introduction to feminism. And having grown up in a house where the older sister was a feminist and the father was very progressive around gender, that was my introduction to it. But I had to learn many different things, and I learned where I was wrong, and I learned the things that I said that was wrong. And I learned how to change my thinking about it, because I like men in many capacities. Personally, I had a father that I loved very much, I had a son that I loved very much, and these men I have big problems with too. But it's all part of the work we do, whether in our personal relationships with men, whether at work, wherever we go, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with men. So it's a big job often that we need to take on when you're a woman who's a feminist. And you don't have to call yourself a feminist. You could call yourself a womanist or nothing at all, but about being conscious of equality and gender and so on. But the point I was trying to make was about the role that men play. I think that sometimes male judges can actually hand down judgments which are even more progressive than some women can in applying the law and the Constitution and their outlook and understanding of the Constitution. So yes, it's not just about the numbers. That's certainly something that I learned. There's many things I want to say, but I'm going to skip now. I didn't actually really plan to talk about all of that I spoke about, so I'm going to move on to something else. But yeah, lots of issues around that came out of this project, the findings. So please, if you want to know more about it, there was a complaint with the CGE, and progress has been made towards attaining gender transformation. Professor Pierre de Vos issued a report also in response to that, I think he was contacted by the CGE. But many important things for us to find there. The problem is that that report didn't focus on women academics. It only focused on women as attorneys, as advocates, and then in the judiciary. And I think that from my own research that I understand, I haven't found much about women academics. So I was quite thrilled to see the Jonathan Jansen report from Stellenbosch University that spoke about the impact of COVID-19 on women academics. So I was going to come here, I was thinking about coming here, talking about just my personal experience, but I can never do that because for me, my life is not just about the personal stuff. It's about the politics and your profession. And if you live a life where all of those things come together, you can't talk from one of those kind of identities. Because it's about a life, not just something you can talk about today and forget about it tomorrow. That's a very kind of thing. When we talk about how women, and for me personally, how community work is important for me, and then often it has actually done it quite a cost. It's an extension of the type of care work that we do as women. The extra stuff we do when talking to students who are crying in your office about difficulties they experience. Students are not likely to approach the male, often the male academics, they don't. But it's all part of this around how we, I think now, and this is also something dangerous to say, but it's okay, I'm always getting into trouble about dangerous things and that helps me learn. So I think that before, I believe everything was socially constructed, so that everything, and to a major part I still do believe it is, but I do think there is also some things that are natural. The nature versus nurture argument, which is an ongoing one. I think it's both. A lot of it. And there is an argument around the hypothalamus in the brain being more developed in women, and that could influence how we react to things and do things differently. But from a social construction perspective, we as women, from when we are born in the same way that men are, we are born into social construction, so we are taught the gender norms and roles that we are expected to perform in society. And when, as women or men in fact, when we fail to do that, to continue that and support it, what happens is that, or perpetuate it, we get punished. So that's why we see transgender women, for example, still facing high levels of violence, being murdered on quite regularly. Actually, the stats are still quite high. We see women who step out of their place in the home being punished through violence, and then of course there is the institutional and systemic violence that happens in more subtle ways, which is often very difficult to tackle because it's so deeply ingrained in a system and in how things are organized. But this happens to women regularly. Some of the very good examples you made, the unequal pay, or just how systems are built. The systems are not built for women. It's often still built for men. So there's the same expectations of men and women, despite the fact that women often have a different type of burden of care or responsibility. If it's not just for their own children, the other type of care that we give for the sick. We saw a lot of this happening in COVID. And the Jonathan Jansen report legitimizes a lot of my personal experience and definitely many other women. So unfortunately, we often need our experiences to be legitimized. So when we share the stories, as both of you so bravely did, and thank you for sharing that, these are very personal stories about struggles and challenges, but what we've learned and somehow to go forward. But the point is that often what we say needs to be legitimized. It's not treated in the same way, particularly when you're a woman of color. We still live in a country and many parts of the world where when white men speak, that becomes the truth. And that is what it is. And it's very difficult when you are at the bottom of the, and me not so much right at the bottom, but close to the bottom of the ladder, and that is what you need to engage with. Constantly, what you say is questioned about whether what you say can really be trusted, is really good enough, she's probably talking nonsense. You know, it's this kind of thing. So you can get somebody, women of color is highly intellectual, but still they will be questioned. I mean, this is the reality of black women, all over in fact, and especially I think in a profession such as the law that is, as Professor Little spoke about, we know the roots of it. It's a man's world, a man's profession. So yeah, there are lots of these things. So having a report such as a report from Professor Jansen, firstly I was very happy that it was a man that was involved in such research and not a woman, because then that report would have been critiqued in far harsher ways. But the report is important because what it speaks about is women's realities during COVID-19. And I think that nothing in the report is entirely new. It just illustrates that during COVID-19, the lockdown that's linked to COVID-19, all of the gender inequalities were exacerbated or deepened. Like we saw GBV stats increasing in terrible ways. So all of these things have been deepened and exacerbated. I mean, we're just talking about gender and women and academia. We're not even talking about some of the issues of the socioeconomic issues that what happened in our poverty and so on was deepened, joblessness, all these things. But the point is, I think the report was useful. That we have something that, and I see that there's also an article that was published January 2022. And this research involved surveys at 26 universities and 2,209 women. So I think it's quite a big group. So for me, during COVID, I think my real meltdown, or what happened to me at the end of last year, was where the depression hit, and I didn't realize it's got locked down for the last 2 or 3 years, 2 years. And I was really down and out and unable to do anything or move forward and got really ill, which is not like me. I've never been ill like that and not been able to get better constantly. And it's about a culmination of issues, but also around a number of years of working under conditions that are not healthy. You know, we're not meant, I don't believe we're meant to be working at home every day with toddlers screaming and running around and growing up where they're unable to live a normal, healthy life, where they're able to leave a home and go to a park or go to school or preschool so that people can work. And, you know, the different roles really become very muddled up in terms of caring for the child that comes first. That comes before your career. Your child comes before your career always, no matter where you find yourself. They're basic needs. And it's a key responsibility. So you have your child, you have household responsibilities, and then working in a situation where you are now teaching people online. So you becoming familiar with online teaching, and it's not just for women. Men have had the same experience with it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying it's different for women because in the home, we are expected to perform so many other roles, often very different to men, whether men like to acknowledge it or not. This is not just, it's not only a personal thing, this is how society is structured, and we know this. It's not just about the research. This exists, patriarchy exists for many years, and the household has and continues to be for many women one of the main sites of oppression, and that cannot be argued. So we can have an argument about it, but the truth is, this is the reality. We can have many women share their stories of this. So, what I'm saying is that it was tough. I'm so happy to come out on the other side, grateful, and it's been much worse for many other women. My experience is not unique, and it is not something, and I won't say the worst, there's much worse. We were dealing with big issues of people dying during COVID and so forth. So, yeah. There's a lot more I can say, but I'm going to work towards finishing off now. I think there are, you know, I think that I learned a lot actually during COVID as well, around navigating online teaching and learning, and now being able to, as Prof. Lawack said in the meeting recently, use both. And that has helped me a great deal, in fact, so things are looking positive. So yes, the point is, there were people, lots of women experienced feelings of hopelessness, anxiety, stress during COVID, having to work, teach online, students who have different mental health needs, you become a counsellor, and just feeling overwhelmed and actually doing much more work than you do ordinarily. But we are here now and we've learned from COVID. There are some positive things for me. I did have some teaching relief at one time which helped me write more on my doctorate. But there were still so many other responsibilities. The admin, the committee work, and then the stuff I want to do that's important for my life, which is community work. So just like I've said in some of the reflections of ending off, I think that COVID-19 and what the Janssen report talks about is just an illustration of what's happening, what is continuing to happen in society, but which was deepened and exacerbated during COVID-19. The home can be a dangerous space for women's careers in many ways if there's not the type of support you need. As women, we are not really given wives, and the role that wives are meant to play, which means we don't often have that type of support. Many women have in many ways, gone through the difficulties and come out brilliantly on the other side and excelled in their careers. But people are also different, so just because some have done that doesn't mean it's the same for anybody. For everybody, some issues differ, people have different extents of problems, and women do as well. So yes, I don't have much more to say. I have more to say, but I'm going to end there. Like I said, I was just trying to share some things informally about my experiences and how that is linked to the type of politics I ascribe to the gender politics and living a feminist life in a non-feminist world as a lawyer. But you know, one thing I can say I'm very grateful for. As a young person having grown up with other challenges, as experiencing the domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence, and most women do in fact, as we know. The point is what helped me get through, and for younger people and students who have these challenges, that some level of family support can really, really get us a long way. And if we don't have it there, getting it from friends and people. And the university, UWC does have some support structures. I don't know if it is enough, but perhaps that is also what's needed, and to constantly be thinking about how, as a university, we question and work towards changing the type of systems we have, because it's a big job to change systems. So institutional and systemic inequality is not something that changes overnight. That's something that takes a long time, because sometimes even as women, we embody or perpetuate the kind of masculine norms which people are comfortable with. And we do it ourselves, sometimes not even fully being aware of it. And so I think it's about constantly interrogating and trying to dismantle the structures that are problematic for us. And we need to, with all our differences, work together in changing the realities so that we make things better for ourselves, but not just for ourselves, mainly for other women and other generations. But look, things have changed, and there has been progress. We see the improvements. Women are speaking out more, and increasingly the climate is changing, and men are becoming more conscious. But a lot of more work needs to be done with men and boys for gender equality still. But thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much. So, the food should be coming. I'm just quickly going to check on it, and I was hoping that the artworks will be running since we have power. So just wait 1 or 2 minutes. But I was wondering, so maybe an open mic, anyone else, particularly students, like to share. But I also wondered, Justice Sachs, I know you're on formally at 1 and 2, but while we have the students, if you wanted to do 1 or 2 reflections.
What's on the
Yeah. Maybe just in response to Basil or to the students while we have there. And I'm just going to run up.
One of the things I know, if I'm woken up at 2 in the morning and I'm asked to give an impromptu presentation, I can't do it, I know I'm dead. I was actually going to go to the toilet, but I'll keep it in. Just to say how at home I feel here. And in a way how jealous I feel. I'm going to be talking in that seminar room. It's so boring. Around the seats there, we all make you think, no, I've got to be serious. And yeah, it's relaxed, and now I've got to be human. That's fantastic. And I think that's what I like about UWC. I'm kind of torn. It used to be 2 ways, it's now 3 ways. I went to UCT, I was a rebel at UCT. I used to rush past the road statue. You had other fish to fry then, like apartheid. But I hated roads. And I would pass my exams and I would listen to the professors and they're speaking about freedom and justice and rights. Fantastic. And I would write about justice, freedom and rights. And then at night I would go down to Vivienne and vacations and I'd be sitting in a Pondoki. We didn't have lights then, we just had candles. And you'd see the whites of the people's eyes and the whites of their teeth. And the people hated the law. The law was the police. The law was the van. The law was somebody demanding a pass. The law was somebody throwing you into jail if you hadn't paid your debt. The law was the enemy. But they gave their lives for justice. So the professors at UCT loved the law but wouldn't give their lives for justice. And the people now, with maybe standard 2, standard 3, standard 4, would give their lives for justice but hated the law. And that was a more profound tension even than the tension created by apartheid, which was obvious and formal and organized and manifestly horrible, detestable, had to be fought against. How can you get rid of that formal system of racial oppression? But that ambiguity of the law, and it was in a way tearing me apart, and the revolution was going to resolve everything. through the revolution, we transformed the society, we transformed the law, we transformed the institutions. You see, I'm always good at keeping people's attention while the food is arriving. And in fact, paradoxically, ironically, interestingly, fascinatingly, it wasn't the revolution that enabled the two sides of Albi to come together. The beautiful phrases of the ages that people had fought for in many countries, many continents, for justice, for freedom, against oppression, against torture, against abuse. It had to be something. I couldn't just discard it as kind of class mystification. But also that passion in the hearts of ordinary people who were suffering so much from the law. And it wasn't the revolution that brought the two sides of Albi together. It was the Constitution. So for me, the Constitution isn't just a beautiful document that we produce to create a foundation for a new South Africa. In that sense, it was very personal for me. Because we can't rubbish the great phrases of the ages. They all came from struggle. They all came from people, many who died, who were tortured, exiled, banished, disdained, marginalized. But they fought for rights. For a kind of world where everybody mattered, where everybody had a voice, where people, these important things. On the other hand, if they remain abstract ideals that you get distinctions for if you get them correctly ordered in your exam paper and just stay like that, then they don't have the punch, the significance. They don't even have the energy that went into their creation. So the whole art of our Constitution was to devise mechanisms to enable the freedom fighters, my comrades in the struggle. Many died. Ruth First, we know, 4 or 5 close comrades, Dave Khan was assassinated, Lutz Marshall Wandley, my client, my friend in the underground together, he was beaten to death. And Barbara Sodadri, I played cricket with him for the advanced cricket team. He was thrown out of the window. I don't know why his name is never mentioned. We heard about Timor, but what about Barbara? So people I was close to, they died. And we wanted now this Constitution to be meaningful, to be resonant. And how do you do that when you've got the dreams, you've got the masses, you've got right on your side, but the regime has got the guns, the administration, the power. They're not going to hand over so that you can deal with them. And that was the whole art of constitution making in South Africa. To do it now, it wouldn't be through a revolution. I lived through the Mozambican revolution, I sang the songs, I wasn't there in the armed struggle, but afterwards it was a wonderful time to be there. It seemed to clarify everything and resolve everything, and everybody uniting behind Frelimo, create the new society on behalf of the poor, on behalf of the masses. No space for opposition. Opposition doesn't go away, it goes underground, it gets picked up internationally, you have civil war. I lost an arm, there's thousands of Mozambicans lost their legs through landmines. There were child soldiers. There were millions of refugees. There were tens of thousands of Mozambicans killed by other Mozambicans, the country torn apart. We avoided that. We avoided that. When we came back from exile, people said, "Oh, I know what's happening. We're on the verge of the revolution, and now you're talking about negotiations." And I was so happy we were negotiating. Because that revolution, and I'm not anti-revolutionary in spirit, I grew up believing in revolution, that transformation, the radical profound changes, the changes of not just circumstances but of vision and the culture of society and the togetherness of human beings, these things haven't left me. But the violence that would have been involved, we would have won after 20 more years. But you would have inherited a ruined, destroyed country. And you can rebuild the farms and rebuild the factories, rebuild the homes. You can't rebuild the hatreds that was so intense, and we managed to find a country that at least we've got a country. I'll just end with this now. When people say to me, and I mentioned I've got 2 other universities, I gave a talk at Stellenbosch University that used to be the enemy. First the enemy in the rugby field, and it was Mr. Whitey cheering on the Sixth Continent, and then it became the centre of Dr. Verwoerd and theorized racism and so on. And now Stellenbosch is admitting, acknowledging the need for change and undergoing huge, tumultuous, complicated changes, sometimes fought out over the language issue and so on, but it's a vital, interesting place to be. UCT, my alma mater, where I got a BA, LLB, and an honorary degree, and was honorary professor, and an inaugural lecture, by the way, in 1991, was called Perfectibility and Corruptibility. We did envisage corruption. We didn't imagine that the people in charge would all be beautiful Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Adelaide Sisulu. We said the theme was that all constitutions are based on the tension between aiming for perfectibility and guarding against corruption. And both those elements were built into the Constitution. That was 1991 at UCT. I was here in the Community Law Centre with Bella Omar, with Alana Loka, Bridget Mabanda, Yvonne Horo joined us afterwards, Zola Scuria was there. And I just wish UWC took pride in its extraordinary accomplishments. When I asked people which were the 2 universities that had the biggest impact on the constitution-making process, people say UCT, no. Wits, no. Durban, no. Then they a little bit, Stellenbosch, no. Pretoria. And they give up. It was UWC and Potchefstroom. Potchefstroom was there with de Klerk, providing his intellectual armory. And here it was Community Law Centre. Asmal began into the moot court afterwards. We got the moot court. UWC put on workshops on the electoral system, on regionalism, on affirmative action, on social economic rights, on whether to have a constitution. All these key things, UWC, Community Law Centre, the Centre for Democratic Studies at UWC did that. Why should I be telling your story to you? You should be telling your story to new students and to the world. All of which, really, the themes that unite all of this are the themes of the constitution and constitution-making process as being part of an emancipatory process. Not just a technical, legal construction that's been created to enable society to be managed and work, but the very nature of the engagement and how you do it. And another day you can wake me up at 2 in the morning and I explain the 2-stage process of constitution making. You all know about the 2-stage process of constitution making? No. You all know about the Constitutional Court declaring the Constitution to be unconstitutional? I hope I couldn't go and ask a group at UCT and they will put up their hands. Or Stellenbosch, they will put up their hands. Anyway, just to trivia you to know this is part of your history. This is why I feel so at home there. And so it's so moving to hear these stories. So moving to hear these stories. But what I do feel is a sense of joy. You've got different dreams. You've got a choice between your dreams. That's your dilemma. Wow, we've achieved so much. And that theme of emancipation for women has been so deep in our struggle and so important in our struggle, and it's so well reflected in our constitution. And I'm thinking now, can we get somebody at UWC to tell the story of why non-sexism came into the constitution? Why the customary law is made subject to the equality principles? not a choice between isolated customary law that's patriarchal and for the rest, equality, the link between the two. Why freedom rights are so strongly related to the body and the bodies of women, unique in the world. There's so many elements unique in the world in our Constitution. And I'm thinking now, who's going to write that story? And Vivienne is just from UWC, written a book on 85 to 90, the foundations of our constitutional order. Deep in our politics, deep in our struggle. Who's going to write from 90 to 92 all these seminars put on, workshops by UWC, the decisions that were taken there? Why should we hide them from history? You're the ruling class, at least at UWC. You might be the ruling class in the country, but the ruling class in terms of your own studies. Who's going to write about the two-state process of constitution making? Where we got a constitution to get an election, to create a new government, and a newly elected parliament that would draft the final constitution, according to principles agreed to in advance. So this is the challenge I'm throwing out to you. I'm just warming up now. And I hope I've got something left to say. What about the fact that I was rushing to the toilet?
Yes.
Okay? All the flukes are right?
Yes.
Thank you again, everyone. And this was just an appetizer. So in the next 5 minutes, we'll have to move over into the moot court for the formal seminar. But I wanted everyone just to grab something light. Students, if you can join us, but I will understand, we know you have a test later on. But the rest, people might already be booking on for the other seminar going online. So please grab something and move into the next room. Thank you so much.